Welcome to the Great Awakening Show. I am Joanne, Divine Life Yogini, and on this week's show, we have Dan Millman. Dan is a former world champion athlete, university coach, martial arts instructor, and college professor. He is the author of 18 inspirational books published in 29 languages, and his bestseller, Way of the Peaceful Warrior, was adapted into a feature film starring Nick Nolte. For 40 years, through his books, seminars, and courses, Dan Millman has shown how to live with a peaceful heart and a warrior's spirit. And he teaches the peaceful warrior's way all around the world.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the Great Awakening Show.
Oh, yes. Oh, here, we're back. Okay. Yeah. Yes, well, I'm delighted and I appreciate the invitation. And I'm going to follow your lead. Wherever you'd like to go with it, I'm happy to follow.
Lovely. So, Dan, honestly, you've been such a wonderful inspiration to so many around the world. And for our audience, I would really like you to describe your amazing, incredible book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, how you came to write it, and the inspirational movie.
Sure. That's a good place to start. For those who aren't familiar with my work, let me just describe first the story from my new memoir called Peaceful Heart, Warrior Spirit, not to confuse two books. Peaceful Warrior, Way of the Peaceful Warrior was my first book, and my 18th and culminating book was just completed, which is a memoir, the true story of my spiritual quest. And as it describes, I was a college professor at the time in Oberlin, Ohio, in the US, teaching a martial arts course because I had a background in the martial arts. And I was teaching a course for beginners in Aikido and Tai Chi, combining those two arts. And I was going to naturally call it The Way of the Warrior. But it didn't quite seem to fit because these were internal arts. They're more defensive, receptive arts, though they could be quite active. And so I said, that title just doesn't quite work. And then a light bulb moment happened. I went, hey, why don't I call it The Way of the Peaceful Warrior? Which lent a kind of balance to it. And I remembered that phrase from that course years later when I wrote the book. And I'm jumping ahead for people, don't have any context. As the new book, the memoir describes, it began in a sense when my mother loved to work out in the world. And so she got me into kindergarten, began me in school just when I was barely old enough. I was always the youngest boy in the class. And I was also small in stature, which worked well for gymnastics, which I eventually got into. Not so good for basketball, though. Yeah. So I also tended to talk too much, a lifelong habit, I think. And so I attracted the attention of some bullies. And incidents of bullying led me to an interest in self-defense and the martial arts, thus the term warrior. And I describe all that in my foundational years, discovering my first trampoline, loving just jumping up and down, because I always admired Superman and Peter Pan because they could fly. Superwoman hadn't been invented yet. So it's just all about, Peter Pan and Superman. And I love it. I think it represented ascension, rising above, what I later understand more to be transcendence or awakening. And so that loving to jump on a trampoline, who knew it would have led to a scholarship to the University of California at Berkeley and gymnastics career, coaching at Stanford University, coaching an elite team there, and then the professorship or the faculty position at Oberlin College. That was part of all my foundation. And I had, like many people, I had role models and sources of inspiration, teachers, those few teachers many of us remember from our youth, one or two who just demanded our best from us and really understood us. But I worked with 4 primary mentors who really influenced my life and work. And after I worked with the first 2 of those 4 over a period of 10 years, that's when I wrote Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Because many people who know my work assumed I just met this old guy in a gas station I called Socrates, because he reminded me of the ancient Greek. And then I started teaching, but it was much more than that. So that's why I bring up the idea of my the new memoir, because it really tells the true story behind the story of Peaceful Warrior. And also, if those who really don't understand, they say, what is this peaceful warrior idea? How can you be peaceful and a warrior?
Yeah.
Well, I view all of us, each of us and all of us, as a peaceful warrior in training, in the sense that we're each seeking to live with a more peaceful heart, a sense of serenity, equanimity in the midst of the changing world and all that happens in the daily news and so on. And at the same time, I think we recognize there are times in our lives when we need a warrior's spirit.
Yes.
It's not just about fighting, but marching into life, standing up tall inside of ourselves.
Yes.
And marching into life. So that's why I use the term peaceful warrior as applying to all of us. And that's why many people resonated with the title and theme of that book, Coming of Age in the New Age, so to speak.
Absolutely wonderful. That book and the movie is so iconic, and it's so wonderful for our younger generation. It's timeless, the movie, really. But the most, I mean, for me, it's all about living, surrendering and being soft, but having that strength, that inner strength, that perseverance, standing up for ourselves, standing up for our rights and what we believe in, and speaking about that. That's what a true warrior is, standing up for others, but always with the heart, always with that peace and that love, doing it with love, isn't it?
Yes. Mother Teresa said it beautifully. She said, we can't all do great things, but we can do small things with great love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And one of the really beautiful things from the book and the movie was all about being here now. Those 3 sentences at the end of that movie is so good. Where are you? I'm here. What time is it? Now. Yeah. And it's like, so tell us about, living as a peaceful warrior, and tell us about being in this divine moment, because this is all we have. This is the truth.
Right. Well, I wish I could boil my teachings down to just that, but it is a good handle. And it's obviously not original. Ram Dass wrote Be Here Now.
Ram Dass, yeah.
In many books. Robert Frost spoke in his poetry about the present moment, extracting the utmost from this present moment. So it's been around a long time, since the ancient Greeks, and before that, the Taoist teachers and so on. But I have a little different take, and I hope to lend clarity to that idea of living in the present. And the movie wasn't as good as the book. Movies rarely are, because they can't capture the inner life of the character. And the book captured a much larger story, a quest for enlightenment. Whereas the movie, it was about a young athlete learning things that helped his gymnastics and maybe gave him a few insights about life. But yes, it was a wonderful meal for consciousness in 2 hours.
Yes.
And as far as this idea, look, first of all, it's a paradox, living in the present. We all have heard that. It's good to live in the present, focus on the present. But why? What is that about? First of all, there's no such thing, technically. Any physicist will tell us there's no such thing as a present moment. How do you grasp a nanosecond? A millionth of a second. Where is the present moment? So teachers like myself, when we talk about the present moment, we're really saying, handle what's in front of you and notice the difference between the present and what we call the past and future. Because many of us are lost most of the time. Even as we pass through this eternal present, we're thinking about, our mind is flitting from the past, what we imagine that to be, to the future, anticipating our day, what's going to happen, which rarely turns out exactly as we imagine. So, the past, what we call the past, no longer exists.
Yeah.
It only exists in the synapses of our brain. We call it memory. It's a wonderful capacity of human beings to remember, to learn from the past, nostalgize, reflect. And what we call the future is our imagination. It never arrives. The future is always the future. It's always tomorrow. It's always 5 minutes from now. All we really have is the eternal present, this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment.
Yeah.
And so why would we want to focus on that? Well, we can certainly plan our day. Nothing wrong with remembering things from the past, what we call that. But we don't want to confuse them because many of us have emotional charges, anxiety, regrets. All that stuff comes up because of our brain flitting around to these illusory places that no longer or haven't yet appeared, no longer exist, haven't yet appeared. So by focusing on the present moment, first of all, the mind quiets because we cannot think about anything in the present moment. The moment we reflect or think about something, I can almost guarantee, in fact, I can guarantee that it is about the past or future. Because in the present moment, all we have is this cat-like awareness. If I threw a ball to you and said, catch, and you were reaching to catch that ball, you wouldn't be thinking about what you're going to have later today for dinner or what you did yesterday. You would be just like that cat reaching out, completely focused, which is why we enjoy playing catch, playing frisbee, doing sports, playing musical instruments, performing, because they pull us back into that present moment, what we call the zone or, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Flow. Books have been written about that too. So that's really a central core. It's a foundation. It's one of those life skills that we lose in growing up. We start anticipating, our mind gets busy and so on. So yeah, one reason to be in the present, it's the only moment of reality.
Yeah.
It's the only moment of power. We can only do something about the present moment, our actions right now. So that may be a little longer than you anticipated, but I wanted to share with your listeners what I mean by the present moment, rather just a bumper sticker slogan.
Exactly. And it's being mindful, isn't it? Being mindful of what you're doing, not, in that time. So whatever you are doing, being mindful of it, isn't it? And you're so right when you say the power, because all the power is in the present moment, because what we're thinking now is creating our future. And we can begin again. We can all renew and we can begin again with new thoughts and new feelings in this moment. This is what the power is, isn't it?
Yeah. Every moment is fresh. Absolutely. So that's where, if we look back on our lives to the present moment, what brought us to this present moment? What shaped our lives and any achievements we've accomplished, whether that's graduating from school and so on. It's something we did. It's something we actually brought into the world, an action we took. Many of us get a little confused and we're trying to fix our insides. We've grown up in a psychological culture or spiritual culture that says you need to fix your insides to be enlightened, to live wisely and well. You need to have the right emotions. You need to feel gratitude and peace and love and kindness and courage and confidence and happiness in order to live wisely and well. That's an interesting thing to look at. We also were told we have to have a quiet mind, think positive thoughts, because our thoughts create our reality. Okay, well, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But I've come to the realization after working with these 4 mentors over really a 20-year period, that we have less control by our will over what thoughts happen to us. We don't say, I think I'm going to think this thought next.
No.
Thoughts appear in our field of awareness. And sometimes they're positive and sometimes they're negative. They vary, but they simply appear as they would in meditation. And feelings pass through us like the weather patterns of the body, changing all the time. We can't will ourselves in an instant to just snap out of it and feel something different than what we're feeling. Yet all feelings pass over time. So rather than my focus today is, and this approach to living, I call the Peaceful Warrior's Way, is focus less on what we have less control over and focus more on what we have more control over, which is actually what we do, our actions, moment to moment. If I decided I wanted to touch the tip of my nose, I could do it, unless I'm disabled. But we have more control over how we move our arms and legs and mouth, which is an action, speaking, than we do over what thoughts appear or emotions pass through us. And I'm not saying devalue or ignore emotions or thoughts. As you say, a mindful approach to noticing our thoughts and feelings. They have information, just as we would in meditating. We notice them and they flow by.
Yes.
Now, it's funny, you use the word mindfulness or mindful. When I was speaking in Melbourne, Australia, I was introduced as an expert, an American expert on mindfulness. And the first thing I said to the audience was, my wife might beg to differ. Because when she sees how I do the dishes, and I'm always leaving little spots here and there on the dishes, Dan, pay better attention, because mindfulness has become a thing. Like I practice mindfulness, but really mindfulness simply means paying attention to what's happening in the present moment without judgment, just noticing it. And if we turn that mindful attention inward, we call it mindfulness meditation, noticing thoughts and feelings and whatever passes through consciousness. And if we, but equally important, and maybe even more so, is being mindful of what's around us. There was a wise teacher who once said, when passing by a mirror, notice the frame. That's a radical statement, because most of us are so preoccupied with ourselves, looking at our own reflection. We don't even notice the frame. We don't notice the world around us. We can be walking through a park, lost in thought. So to pay attention to what's going on around us and the beauty of the world. And that is an important form of mindfulness as well.
Yes. That brings us into presence, that does. And being in Mother Nature is so beautiful, because she's so healing, and she uplifts us, and all them little things that are happening around us, it's just automatically brings us into that presence. I feel, it's wonderful.
As soon as we pay attention to what's going on around us. And those people who are the most unhappy people are constantly they're directed inward. When they speak in public, they're terrified because they're going, will they like me? How do I look? And they're preoccupied with themselves. Those like me who just focus on what they like to share with the audience. And I look at the people around me. I enjoy them. And I'm seeing that they're just waiting, to hear something. So I want to share with them. Then the anxiety goes away. So I think this focus on the world around us is quite important. The Japanese I walk in the park or bicycle in the park or around a big loop here in Brooklyn, New York, 4 times a week, at least 4 times a week. And the Japanese call it forest bathing.
Yes.
It's a lovely term.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Lovely. And it's true. It's true. So much healing from that. And tell us a little bit about the spiritual laws, law alignment.
Yeah, sure. Actually, you've heard the saying, that opinions are like belly buttons, we all have one. Everyone has opinions. We read the news, we form an opinion. It's automatic, like a reflex thing. Good, bad, we have all these judgments. And that's, discernment, it's fine. But I hope that my work and this approach that I teach is not based simply on my opinions, because my opinions are no better or more valuable than yours or anyone else's. They're just opinions. And people ask me what I believe, and I go, what does it matter what I believe? What I do is who I am, what I do. I can say I believe in this or that, but that can change over time. So the way I teach is founded on spiritual or universal laws. And to explain what I mean by a spiritual law, and it could bring, I think, a bit more clarity to many people, because we hear words, but we're not sure what they really actually mean, how they're used. For example, when I was a kid, I was pretty disoriented. If ignorance is bliss, as they say, I was ecstatic because I didn't really know. I didn't know what was going on. What is the world? I looked up and around. What are the rules here? What is life for? This is when I was growing into adolescence, and no one seemed to really know. Some claimed they did, but they didn't seem to know from my view. So I started collecting pithy wisdom. I collected quotations. It's been a lifelong hobby and calling of mine. And the first quote I remember ever coming across, a gentleman named Ben Franklin's, a penny saved is a penny earned. Now that seemed really true. A penny saved is a penny earned. But then I came across a quotation that seemed to be the opposite of that. It said, nothing ventured or risked, nothing gained. So what, should I risk or should I save? I didn't know. So then I came across, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Oh, but you're never too old to learn. Or absence makes the heart grow fonder. Oh, but out of sight, out of mind.
It's just such a contradiction.
All contradictions.
Yeah.
But then I came across a quote that said a chain breaks at its weakest link. We've all heard that. It's like a cliche. We go, oh yeah. But if you look at it, there is nothing to contradict it. It was the first time I stumbled across an actual law. Because if you take 10,000 chains and snap them, every single one will break where? At its weakest link. And it's not just about chains. The second quality of spiritual law is it's universal. You can count on it every time, and it applies not just to chains, but to everything, including us. We break at our weakest link, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, sexual, social, financial. Whatever our weak link is, that's where we're going to break. And it's wisdom there. It means we want to shore up, strengthen our weak links. So for example, we've all heard of the law of attraction. However, it's not actually a law. It's the theory of attraction. Because a law works every time in every situation. And if you have 1 million people read a book about the law of attraction, you'll get hundreds of stories of people said, I just read the book and I found the love of my life. Or I just read the book and I won the lottery. And so we have wonderful stories, anecdotal. But unless something works every time, then it is not a law. It's a theory or principle or idea or notion. So the work I teach is founded on these laws that I included in a book I wrote called The Life You Were Born to Live. And that brings up the life purpose system. And I learned that from the third mentor I describe in the new memoir. Someone I call the warrior priest. There was a series of lectures that he gave. He wouldn't reveal where he learned this particular interpretation of how to add up the numbers of our date of birth to get valid, reliable, accurate information. It doesn't make any rational sense, but then you can't find the square root of a sonnet either. So I can't really explain the system. I just know after working with it for 30 years or so, that it has uncanny accuracy. You've probably come across it yourself if you've looked into that book. So the life purpose system is based on what I learned from the warrior priest. 10 years later, I wrote a book about it, and it's become one of my most popular books because it does help. It's a quantum leap in self-knowledge, understanding our life path, some fundamental purposes of our life. And more important, not just a book of insight, which would be useful enough, but I also include specific spiritual laws for different life paths to help overcome the hurdles on those life paths. We can actually apply them, the law of balance, the law of process, and so on, to overcome our weak areas, our weak links on our life path. I hope that responds to your query.
Beautiful, because I think that is one of the most troubling things on our spiritual journey here on the earth plane is to our destiny, our life purpose. So many people are wanting, to find that one thing that what gives them passion, that is their passion, number one, and is their life purpose.
Yes.
It's the missing key in everyone's life.
And that's why life purpose has been a central point in my teachings. I wrote one book called The Life You Were Born to Live, I just mentioned, another called The Four Purposes of Life, another called Living on Purpose.
Wow.
In the Peaceful Warrior movie, maybe you remember the scene, the character playing me, Dan, he and Socrates hike up this big hill. And then Dan has a revelation and he says, Socrates, I just realized that it's the journey that makes us happy, not just the destination. And that there's some wisdom in that because most of our life is spent on the journey. And yet, without a destination in mind, there is no journey. We just wander around. I believe that we're all, each and all, hardwired goal seekers. Again, looking for a purpose. When my little granddaughter was crawling across the floor, she wasn't doing it just to exercise or get a workout. She wanted something, her big brother's toy. So she was crawling toward it, that sparkly thing. And ever since infancy, we're wired to seek goals. The most happy people are absorbed in pursuit of a goal. In fact, I would define success as making progress toward a meaningful goal.
Yes.
So as I mentioned in the Four Purposes of Life, even if we aren't clear on our cosmic purpose, what we're here to do on Earth, ultimately, we all know our purpose in this present moment. I know my purpose right now, sharing with you,
yes,
and your listeners, and you know your purpose. We always know our purpose in this moment, and if we don't, we better, if we want to live purposefully, we better focus. What do I want here? If we wander into let's say 5 people are talking, relatives at a party, and we wander in and we join the group, we must have had a purpose for doing that. We want to give information, get information, share a warm feeling. There's some reason we walked into that group and didn't walk away. So we need to live purposefully. And that is a good start for having a purpose in life. The purpose in this moment. It's the 4th purpose in the book. And it is a good grounding influence in all of us.
Yes.
People say, I don't have a purpose. They're referring to unclarity about some cosmic purpose.
Yes.
Though the book, The Life You Were Born to Live, does help in that deeper sense of purpose. And many of us think of our purpose as our career or calling. What am I here to do with my life and my energy? And how can I make an income in a meaningful way, commensurate with my talents, my values, and my interests? And that's one of the purposes in that little book, The Four Purposes of Life, career and calling, and understanding the difference between the two.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Because it's the career, but it's the spiritual purpose as well. You know, it's a combination. And because we are human and divine, aren't we? We are spiritual and physical, both, which is,
exactly.
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. And so, and I'd really like to understand. I mean, I believe that we're going through, this is the name of this show, The Great Awakening Show. A great awakening is happening. It's really speeding up, I feel, for the whole world. I know that every since our birth, we're all going through this awakening and evolvement, but it really is speeding up. I really feel it, our ascension. And of course, it's bringing up all of the, darkness as well as the light so that we can see it and acknowledge it, which causes even more, awareness and awakening. And how do you see humanity's future from this point?
Well, very, very nice question. Very good question. In 1984, I think it was 90, 2004, 2014, almost 40 years ago, I predicted in my first public talk in this approach to living that I teach, I said the pace of change is accelerating, the energy is building. And this was before the internet, before computers were popular, before smartphones, before social media, before everything seemed to like hit the afterburners and really accelerated. Even back then, it seemed like things were on a curve upward, a logarithmic curve, exponential. And I agree with your analysis that with this building of energy and accelerating pace, this awakening, Carl Jung once said, enlightenment doesn't just consist in seeing luminous shapes and visions, but in making the darkness visible.
Yes.
He said, the latter procedure, however, is more difficult and therefore unpopular. This waking up isn't always pleasant. It can be disillusioning. You're seeing through illusions. So in a way, we're getting our noses rubbed in our lack of maturity. We have to see that. Just like, say, someone is an alcoholic, they have to see they have a drinking problem before it can be solved.
Yes.
Awareness of the problem is half the solution. So we're becoming, in a way that's inescapable, aware of humanity's problems. Our tendencies toward short-term self-interest over the highest good of all concerned.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. The profit motive, greed, individualism, the selfishness.
Yes.
Until we make the shift to what is for the highest good of all, for future generations as well.
Yes.
We're on tenuous ground. We're on shaky ground right now.
We are.
And we've all heard the Chinese character that means crisis, which means danger and opportunity. So we have this in front of us right now. We're going through it, a historical period of amazing things. If that wasn't enough, worldwide pandemic. Let's throw that into the mix.
That's right.
It's like banks go through stress tests. Humanity is going through a stress test right now.
I feel like we're going through, it's almost like a dark night of the soul. The whole world's going through this dark night of the soul because so many people are really, really feeling this. It's a collective dark night of the soul as well as an individual dark night of the soul because, people are looking at their lives, they're contemplating, they're changing their relationships that they've outgrown, changing their jobs, changing their life, they're meditating, they're starting to do all these things, they're looking within, they're looking, it's a real time of change for everyone, very uncertain, but
right.
Darkness has to teach us to reach for the light.
Exactly. There's a Serbian proverb, two men looked out of prison bars, one saw mud and the other saw stars. And both mud and stars exist in this world. We can't ignore or deny the mud or we'll step in it. But we also want to remember the stars and remember the possibilities, the paradox. That's why my old mentor, in Way of the Peaceful Warrior, Socrates, gave me that business card that said, paradox, humor, and change. And paradox, Dickens' novel, A Tale of Two Cities, opens with the prophetic words, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most challenging, yet it's the most enlightening.
Yeah, exactly. I view daily life on an individual level for most of us as a form of spiritual weight training. If you don't lift any weights, you don't get any stronger. And the adversities we go through, whether on an individual or a national or world level, bring gifts of strength and wisdom. If we look back on the adversities we faced in the past, we're probably a little stronger and a little wiser because of those. Sometimes climbing out of a dark hole can give us the strength to climb the mountain.
Oh, definitely. That is so beautiful. And how do you see that when we're almost going through that dark stage, but we're going to come out, it's going to rise up, we're ascending into the light. And how do you see that for us?
Well, it's easy to look at it from a human-centric view of how is it going to work out for us? Will it work out for the best? And I could easily just mouth the words and say, yes, it's going to work out for the best. We'll live in an enlightened world, and light and love and peace and kindness will thrive, and we'll turn our swords into plowshares. The lion will lie down with the lamb, and that would be lovely. But we may not even be around. We're an experiment, human beings. And we'll find out, but each one of us can do what we can. What can we do individually? We can, other than politics, supporting candidates who we feel are a little bit better than others, we can show a little more kindness to those around us.
Yes.
We can say a kind word. We can take care of people around us a little bit.
Yes.
And pay attention.
That's beautiful. Yes.
These are things we can do in our, sometimes in the eyes of spirit, little things can make a big difference. If I'm here in New York City, if I see a bit of litter on the street and there's a trash can nearby, I'll pick up the litter and drop it in.
Yes.
So it'll be a little cleaner. Little things like that we can do. A kind word to someone when we're shopping for groceries, and we just wish them a good day. That sort of thing. Little things like that really can make a difference. Also, bringing a little more light into the world. In fact, many people who read Way of the Peaceful Warrior or saw the movie, just my first book of 18, they say, well, it's all about happiness, right? Well, see, at the time I wrote the book, I believed that. Because, very simply put, everything we think we want, whether it's a better relationship or a better income or better work, more meaningful work, whatever we're searching for, the implied promise is when we get that, we'll be happier. We'll be happy. One of the best things about going to college is we found out it doesn't make us happy. Going to uni, many people who never went to uni say, oh, if only I'd gone to university, I'd be happy. If only I had a better relationship, I'd be happy. If only I had children, I'd be happy. If only I hadn't had children, I'd be happy. If only I made more money, I'd be happy. If only I got more respect or had a better job or more meaningful career, I'd be happy. If only I retired, then I'd be happy. And until we find out, until we realize that happiness isn't something that just descends on us permanently, happiness is actually a practice. We can radiate into the world. We can bring happiness into the world. How do we do that? Well, by behaving with kindness, for one thing. I often ask people, what do you like when you're feeling very happy? We've all had moments where we're just feeling very happy. Maybe we have a reason for it, maybe no reason, but we're just feeling happy. And I ask, when you're feeling that way, are you more present? Most people go, yes, I am. Are you kinder? Absolutely. I'm kinder when I'm feeling happy. Are you more enthusiastic? Yes. I say, great. Behave that way. By behaving with kindness, with enthusiasm, with presence, we're actually practicing happiness. Not waiting for it, not checking out, like weighing ourselves every hour. It's like not always asking, am I happy yet? Am I happy yet?
Yeah.
Because that's a good way to make ourselves miserable.
Or waiting for something to make us happy. We're always waiting for that thing. When I have it, then I'll be happy. That's not,
We're happy now. Now, there's no such thing as future happiness because the future never comes. It's always in the future. We can be happy now by practicing. I'm practicing happiness right now. But all kinds of feelings I may be feeling, but nonetheless, I'm trying to bring that state into the world. And that's why we need a warrior spirit, paradoxically.
And
see, I don't. Please go ahead. You were saying, and giving?
Just giving that out to people, to the world is so important. Having the eye contact, talking to them, giving your happiness to others, smiling is so important. It becomes infectious and it helps them. It helps the world.
It does make a difference. There's a story, something happened to me once, really had a big impact. I never forgot it. I was walking down the street and I saw a woman coming the opposite direction and she looked kind of down. Anyway, so I smiled at her and I just said hello as we walked by. And by a weird coincidence, she ended up at one of my talks that I gave a couple of years later. And she told me that she remembered me. And she said, when I was going home, I was planning on taking my life. She said that I had a plan. I knew just what I was going to do. Nobody in the world cared about me. Nothing mattered. And she said, You smiled at me. And she said, I wanted to hold on to that smile a little longer. And it kept me around that afternoon. And she said, the next day, the impulse passed. She said, I wouldn't be here talking to you now without that smile. So you never know what a little gesture, a little smile is going to do. We think, oh, what difference could that make in someone's life? Just saying hello, and smiling at them.
Huge difference.
But it really does make a difference. It does, yeah.
Yes.
Those small things we can do every day, a spiritual underground movement.
Yeah.
When there's even a way to speak from center, speak from your heart. When most of the time we speak from our mind, we're thinking about something we're going to say and we speak from it. There's nothing wrong with that, but all it does is resonate the mind of the other person. But when we speak, when we're in touch with our heart as we speak, we don't have to speak in this kind of tone of voice. We can just speak normally, but if we're in touch with our heart at the same time, it resonates the heart of the other person.
Yes.
And you don't have to believe that just because I'm saying it. If you take two guitars, let's say, or two cellos or violins, and you pluck, and they're both in tune, and you pluck the E string, let's say, on one of the guitars, you know what happens to the guitar next to it? The same string starts vibrating.
Wow.
It's called sympathetic or harmonic
resonance. Yeah.
Resonance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you speak from your heart, it resonates the heart of the other person. And so when you get that food at the soup at the market and you say, hey, that's a lovely scarf you're wearing, but you're saying it from your heart, they won't know when you leave why they feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But their heart's been resonating to it.
That's beautiful.
So little things like that, again, we can bring that, everybody can practice that in everyday life.
Yes. That's the connection. That's human connection that we're all needing, and this is what is bringing around this unity consciousness at this time, and this love awareness at this time, which is absolutely beautiful. And wow, Dan, you're just so fantastic with all of your beautiful way of speaking that everyone can just resonate with. It's so simple, isn't it? It's such a simple.
Ultimately, it
way.
is. Yes. Barbara Rasp once wrote, "The lesson is simple, the student is complicated." So by living as simply as we can, one of the most radical things that I teach is that I do not encourage you to feel happy or kind or loving or peaceful or courageous. I encourage you to behave that way. And many people go, well, wait a minute, that sounds like pretense or hypocrisy, saying one thing and feeling another, but it's like behaving with courage when we're feeling afraid.
Yes.
There's a way we can liberate ourselves from the tyranny of emotions and thoughts and just bring that into life. Behave with happiness, behave with kindness. That's something we have under our control that we can do. And it's an act of transcendence when we're feeling irritated and yet we say a kind word to someone. That sort of thing. Yeah.
And that becomes more and more, that becomes your natural way of being. The more you practice. Dan, I just want to thank you for all of your divine wisdom and truth and for all your amazing books and all of your courses. Where can we find you, Dan?
Well, the easiest way, anybody's curious about my work, they can find the free life purpose calculator at peacefulwarrior.com.
Lovely, lovely. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the Great Awakening Show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Lovely.